Hi, Mr. Karmaura. It's an honor speaking to you. And I've been looking forward ever since I got a call from the ET group about this conversation. And well, Bhutan's one destination that's been like tops my wish list of travel. I've never got a chance to go there. And I'm so glad that I'm getting to speak to someone from that country. And actually, so much I would like to ask you about your beautiful country. But let's stick to few things that we can discuss right now. Well, there is an audience that over here wants to know about a concept that has intrigued the business world, intrigues citizens everywhere, and that is gross national happiness. We've been hearing a lot about it, and we will come to that point. Well, I wore a tiger sweatshirt as I was talking to you. I know the significance it has to your country and your people. Before we begin, I'd just like to know a little, probably in two, three lines about yourself. I mean, you've had quite a journey from Bhutan, and then you've had academic pursuits around the world and political experiences. In short, what is that one part of Bhutan that you take to the world wherever you go?
Well, one can never leave one's country behind, no matter where you go. And I also wish to welcome you one day to Bhutan, Terence. Uh, um, Increasingly, Bhutan is typified around the world um, in two areas. One is that in a time of crisis, everyone is looking towards a a type of philosophy of development which could be sustainable and provides the individuals with much greater level of well-being. So the fourth king's gross national happiness somewhat approximates that search. And so GNH is one which is increasingly becoming popular in this era of beyond the GDP search. The second one, which is um, less in profile but has much greater potential in the future, is a kind of Buddhism that is prevalent in Bhutan, is also spreading because people are now increasingly looking forward to mental peace in the midst of comfortable living conditions. It remains a very elusive goal, as you know. So these two things.
Okay. Well, let's wind the clocks back a little. I think 1970s when Bhutan exactly joined the United Nations and it opened up to the world. The world came to know about this country, about your culture, and there has been an influx of tourism. I think, if I remember correctly, it was the fourth king, His Majesty Wangchuk, who introduced the concept of gross national happiness. What
Yeah.
exactly inspired it? Why that stand of going from GDP to GNH?
Uh, the fourth king, whose reign began in early 70s, uh, um, understood intuitively happiness from the social conditions of Bhutan. That is the main frame for organizing life at that time was really communitarian. And in the communitarian concept of life, you know that mutual understanding about three things are very important, and that is neighborhood and community bond, friendship, neighborhood bond. Second one is the mutual use and access to commons and natural resources and commons. That is also very important now in the times of collapse of common and social properties. And the third one, of course, is the sense of sacredness about nature and divinities. So I think His Majesty the Fourth King was, in a way, talking about the relationship between man and nature and the individual and the community. And he was quite, he put a very strong emphasis on sort of preserving these two fundamental aspects of life, which constitutes actually, in brief, GNH, or gross national happiness.
And how the people accepted it? Because, see, someone to have an ideology at a national standpoint is one thing, but for an
Yeah.
entire populace to accept something like that is another thing. There are certain parameters, as it has been defined for gross national happiness. There are socio-economical equations, there is ecological equations, there is also an religious equations over there. How does this math add up? It's one thing for the king and the ones who are, ruling a country to say that we are going to take happiness as a stand. How does an entire population be inspired? How do they imbibe it? What would you say, that were they all really good brand ambassadors, or would you say that every citizen of Bhutan has imbibed it as a way of life?
Uh, I think to answer this aspect of your question, we have to understand that the individuals in Bhutan were embedded in a Buddhist concept of life, where the good life, is to be understood in terms of flourishing of the community, and that is further linked to the idea of Buddhist virtues, uh, and Buddhist characters. So His Majesty was able to speak to that fundamental um, um, fundamental side of the Bhutanese people, where the end of suffering, in other words, promotion of happiness, is the good life. So uh, uh, it was very easy for him to relate people to this goal. In a way, he accentuated or gave far more prominence in modern era, which risk losing all sort of things like this. So later on, of course, because the bureaucracy was growing and bureaucracy has to be managed to metrics and indicators, the accountability system has to be to such kind of management tools. The 9 domains of gross national happiness and the 33 indicators, which includes both objective conditions of life as well as subjective, intangible, qualitative aspects of life are included. So now it has application in many fields, including a division of a budget at the local government level. The GNH indicators are used as a criteria in the allocation of budget. So, in other words, to make it brief, history and culture of Bhutan allowed uh, him to propel this concept forward to all the people.
Can you name one virtue? You said there were a lot of Buddhist virtues that actually inspired this thought. Just since people are listening, probably give us an example of one of these virtues, and how you have seen it manifest in Bhutan in people's life.
Yeah, these Buddhist virtues, which actually has deep roots in Indian civilization, especially the Indian Buddhist civilization, were propagated by very famous thinkers such as Sanchideva, um, you know, uh, and among others, there are 6 of them. Their generosity, their morality, patience, energy, concentration, and concentration of meditation, and wisdom. Wisdom here doesn't mean some sort of practical wisdom of running your life with prudence, but really wisdom of being able to see that nothing is existing or exist inherently by itself. Everything is related to each other, or the concept of interdependence, concept of compassion, etc. So, yeah,
Yeah, please continue.
yes, go ahead, please.
And where does this? What would you say is the major school of thought? Is that something that is ingrained at an academic level in schools, or do you say it's passed on generation to generation in the house?
Uh, these thoughts really embodying Buddhist idea of flourishing are taught at an academic level in the monasteries, but they percolate downwards to ordinary people's life, So these are very popular uh, um, concepts.
Okay. When we, at least to an outsider, when we think happiness, there would be three aspects. I personally, or everyone listening, if we say happiness, there would be certain things that would inspire. One would be the economic angle to it, that is economic prosperity. One would be the cultural affiliations that drive happiness in India. Or there is also a religious significance and things that kind of drive our way of life. For gross national happiness, from a nation's standpoint, economic, cultural, or religious, which of these parameters you said would you say has the most strongest influence?
Uh, we have a material basis of our life and consciousness, as you know. So, a certain level of prosperity or material condition is, without question, important. But increasingly beyond that, the drives for happiness are not really economic or cultural. Really, as I mentioned, it is the ability to cultivate this kind of flourishing traits in human beings. So the faith is not so much in things like institutional arrangements or democracy or neoliberal economy or things associated with that, macroeconomic balance, trade. Not with those. Really, fundamentally, it comes down to the quality of relationship between human beings and uh, people often express mistakenly that human beings cannot give each other happiness because yours and my happiness notions may be so different. I think it is completely wrong. Human beings, uh, those who are, bonded with you, kins, family, friendship, are the direct source of happiness. Direct source of happiness. All the others are indirect and means of happiness. So I would put this relationship, intimacy, commitment, and sharing as the fundamental constitution of happiness of human beings.
But there is law and order that's still prevalent in Bhutan, and we cannot ignore the very element of human nature, the basic human nature, and the couple of negatives that come with it, vices and malice and greed. How do you balance? I mean, all these factors would kind of affect the harmony in a particular community. So, what role does law and order and police? To what extent do they go to enforce this entire communal harmony that we have there?
Yes, I think this is, you raise a fundamental question. I think in the market economic tradition, individual is the sort of market is the individual is ontologically prior to market or social conditions. As I said, in GNH and communitarian tradition, community settings shape and foster and develop individuals. So they are actually constructed in a certain way. And that is why the flourishing traits of human beings, which open them towards friendliness, towards compassion, towards generosity, frees them and eventually makes them free, light, happy, renewed, connected, etc.
Nice. Tell us a little about life in Bhutan. I mean, have you experienced gross national happiness actually manifest itself in the communities you are connected to? I mean, we
Yeah.
would just like to know a little about life over there. What exactly happens?
Well, life is also heterogeneous, as you know. We can talk about different age groups, different income groups, different regions, etc. But in general, I think the elderly people devote, elderly after 60 devote a huge amount of their time on prayer and meditation. Uh, um, but there is also a inevitable process of migration taking place in Bhutan. So the villages are becoming thinner, and the social support and care is also thereby very tense at the moment. And because of the economic activity of trade, farming is looking a bit weak, and imports from India are substituting domestically produced food. Uh, um, so the most important thing in life, that is the care culture, care culture towards children, towards the elderly and the dependent, has to be maintained. Really, all other economic activities, in a way, are to contribute to this care culture. Uh, they're all indirect inputs. So the Bhutanese government, challenged by this modernization process, is through GNH really looking once again how to restore this completely. So free education, free healthcare, support towards culture, where for example, temple is a focus for all small villages, whether it is Hindu temple or Buddhist temple. Is a center of cultural and spiritual activity of the landscape. So a great deal of investment is really to shore these things up.
Well, we have heard ever since I read about GNH a few years ago, and we have heard world leaders acclaim the model. And I mean, just your personal opinion, since you have been working with so many governments and so many officials, is the model really scalable? I mean, at least since Bhutan is one of the founder nations of SAARC, taking our part of the world, do you feel that a model like GNH could be applicable to any of the SAARC nations? In what way would you see it manifest over here?
Yeah, all nations, because of their distinctiveness, sometimes look at models coming from outside with little bit of doubt and suspicion. This is very natural. But I would like to say that GNH is really culture neutral. GNH is really also scale neutral. And I can say that there are two strong attributes or properties of GNH index, which are somewhat very appealing, not only to our region, which has a lot of things in common, but way beyond across the oceans. Europeans, Latin Americans have also studied this from as far a country as Japan to Colombia, really. So it is scale neutral and culture neutral, I would like to say. The formula or the way we calculate can be decomposed at the individual level to the nth variable level of or conditions of his or her happiness. So unlike GDP, for example, which aggregates everything and is calculated sectorally, we have no view of human beings within the GDP, really, for example. The individual just disappears. But this is not the case. Here, everything is can be ascertained up to the individual level, up to each variable of the individual. They can also be aggregated at district, group, village, or national level. So this makes it really appealing for any analysis by demographic or other economic group or by regional group, and lends to policy making, because policies have to be always made at certain level. It can't be made for the whole country because the whole country is very heterogeneous. So that's one interesting feature. Second interesting feature of the GNH index is that for its calculation, every variable or every attainment or of the condition of happiness, in GNH, we are actually calculating conditions of happiness, not happiness itself. Because everything is conditioned, everything is caused. So you measure the cause, the effect will be known. So every condition has to be dichotomized as sufficient or not sufficient. So um, um, uh, now this brings in an ethical component into GNH index. That is, what is beyond sufficient level is not a great concern. So we are really talking about a sufficientarianism or self-sufficiency level or limitarianism type of ethical position in GNH. And this is also very important criteria because we are facing a question of sustainability.
Okay. Well, there's so much more we would all like to know about the GNH index, and probably a longer conversation in the future would really help. Just a last question before we wrap up, for the people listening, since as I said, Bhutan tops my wish list of travel. There are many people in the audience who would like to go there. So before we end this talk, you could probably tell us one experience or one place in Bhutan that everyone should go to when we are in your country and experience happiness for ourselves. What would that be?
I think in the region, Bhutan is quite well known for its ecological diversity and richness, compacted in a small area. Because it has this enormous range, from the plains to the third highest unclimbed mountain, within a sort of vertical distance of 150 kilometer or so. So
Everything
access
in
to
one, yeah, everything in one place.
nature, and then nature's contribution to human being in terms of aesthetic experience by which you live daily, and if it is deprived, also you live by imagination daily. Oh, that's a very special quality of the kingdom just now, and it
Crazy.
has. Thank you.
Mr. Karma Ura, it's been a pleasure and an honor speaking to you. I really wish we could speak for longer. I sure hope if I come to Bhutan, probably I'll get to meet you in person and we could take this conversation further. Well, from our audience, on behalf of the team at ET, I thank you so much for joining us at this talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.